The polyester uniforms scratched against my skin as I adjusted my name tag for the third time that morning. Maya Rodriguez, crew member. It read in bold letters across the red fabric. I was 19, working the morning shift at Quick Bite Burgers on the outskirts of Phoenix, Arizona, where the desert heat made the fryer feel like a furnace even at 7 a.m. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Family barbecue Sunday. Uncle Rick is flying in from Denver. Can't wait for you to see him. Uncle Rick. My stomach twisted just thinking about him. Mom's older brother had always been the golden child of the family. Harvard MBA, corner office in downtown Denver, BMW in the driveway. Meanwhile, I was here asking customers if they wanted to make their combo a large for an extra $1.50. The breakfast rush hit hard that Tuesday. Orders flew in faster than we could flip pancakes, and the coffee machine decided to malfunction right when the construction workers arrived for their caffeine fix. My hands moved on autopilot. Punch the register, call out orders, wipe down counters, smile at angry customers who blamed me for their late morning meetings. Maya, table 6 needs cleaning, called Derek, my shift supervisor. He was only 2 years older than me but carried himself like he owned the place. Maybe that's what 18 months of experience did to you in this business. I grabbed the sanitizer spray and headed to the dining area. The smell of industrial cleaner mixed with grease had become so familiar I barely noticed it anymore. But today something felt different. As I wiped down the red plastic booth where a businessman had spilled coffee all over his newspaper, I found myself really looking around. This place wasn't glamorous, but it ran like clockwork. Every position had a purpose, every process had been refined over decades. The franchise model was brilliant in its simplicity: take a proven system, replicate it, profit. I'd studied business in high school and started college before financial pressures forced me to take this job. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was living inside a case study I once wrote about. Mrs. Patterson, a regular customer who came in every morning for black coffee and a sausage biscuit, smiled at me as I approached her table. "How's school going, honey?" "Took a break for now," I said, the same response I'd given for the past 8 months. "But I'm learning a lot here." She patted my hand gently. "Don't let anyone make you feel small for honest work. I raised 3 kids working 2 jobs. Look at them now, all college graduates with good careers." Her words stuck with me as I returned to the counter. The lunch prep was starting and I found myself paying attention to things I'd never noticed before. How the manager calculated labor costs, how inventory was tracked, how customer complaints were handled. This wasn't just a job. It was a business, and businesses could be bought, sold, improved, expanded. My shift ended at 2 p.m. and I sat in my beat-up Honda Civic in the parking lot, air conditioning struggling against the Arizona heat. The Quick Bite logo on the building looked different somehow, less like a place I worked and more like a puzzle I wanted to solve. Sunday's family barbecue loomed ahead of me. Uncle Rick would ask what I was doing with my life, probably with that condescending smile he'd perfected over the years. Mom would make excuses for me, Dad would change the subject, and I'd feel like a disappointment all over again. But sitting there, uniforms still smelling like French fry oil, something shifted inside me. Maybe it was Mrs. Patterson's words, or maybe it was finally seeing this place as more than just my temporary stop before real life began. This was real life, and I was about to make it mine. The smell of Dad's famous barbacoa filled the backyard as I pulled up to my childhood home in Glendale. The single-story ranch house looked smaller every time I visited, with its sun-faded stucco walls and desert landscaping that required more water than Arizona wanted to give. But it was home, and Sunday dinners here had been a tradition for as long as I could remember. I'd changed out of my work clothes into jeans and a nice blouse, but I could swear the smell of French fry oil still clung to my hair. Mom greeted me at the back gate with a tight hug and a worried look in her eyes. "Miji, you look tired. Are you eating enough?" "I'm fine, Mom. Just been working extra shifts." I kissed her cheek and grabbed a beer from the cooler. The backyard was full of the usual suspects. Cousins I saw twice a year, aunts who asked too many questions, and kids running around with sticky fingers from Dad's homemade pilates. That's when I saw him. Uncle Rick stood near the grill, wearing khakis and a polo shirt that probably cost more than my weekly paycheck. His salt and pepper hair was perfectly styled, and his laugh carried across the yard as he told some story about a business deal in Denver. "Paya." He spotted me and walked over with that smile that never quite reached his eyes. "Look at you all grown up. How's the job going?" The way he said job Made it sound like I was selling something illegal on street corners. It's going well, actually. Learning a lot about business operations. He chuckled and took a swig of his craft beer. Business operations at McDonald's? Quick Bite Burgers, I corrected, feeling heat rise in my cheeks. Right. Well, we all have to start somewhere, I guess. Though I have to ask, when are you going back to school? You're too smart to be flipping burgers forever. The conversation around us seemed to quiet down. Cousin Maria shot me a sympathetic look from across the patio. Dad focused intensely on the meat he was grilling, jaw tight. I'm actually taking a strategic pause to gain real-world experience, I said, keeping my voice level. Uncle Rick's laugh was loud enough to make a toddler look up from his plate of rice and beans. Strategic pause? Honey, that's what people say when they're stuck. Look, I get it. College is expensive, life is hard. But you can't let yourself get comfortable in mediocrity. Rick. Mom's voice carried a warning, but he was on a roll now. I'm serious, Carmen. Maya's got potential, but she's wasting it asking people if they want fries with that. Do you know what I was doing at 19? Internship at Goldman Sachs. Networking with people who could change my life. That's how you build a career. My beer bottle felt slippery in my sweating palm. And how's that working out for you, Uncle Rick? Still climbing the corporate ladder, making other people rich. His smile faltered for just a second. I'm a senior vice president now, making more money than most people see in their lifetimes. Making money for your boss, you mean? The tension was thick enough to cut with Dad's barbacoa knife. Aunt Sophia hurried her kids toward the playground set, and conversations around us became noticeably louder as people pretended not to listen. At least I'm not wearing a hairnet and asking people if they want to supersize their meal, Uncle Rick said, his voice dropping low. You're better than this, Maya. Or at least I thought you were. That's when something inside me snapped. Not into anger but into crystal clear clarity. You know what, Uncle Rick? You're right. I am better than this. But not in the way you think. I set down my beer and looked him straight in the eye. I'm going to do something you've never had the guts to do. I'm going to stop making other people rich and start building something of my own. He laughed again, but this time it sounded forced. Oh yeah. And what's that? I'm going to own that Quick Bite Burgers franchise. The words came out before I'd fully formed the thought, but as soon as I said them, I knew they were true. Uncle Rick's expression shifted from amusement to confusion to something that looked almost like concern. Maya, do you have any idea how much a franchise costs? We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. Then I guess I better get started. I grabbed my purse and headed for the gate, leaving behind the smell of barbacoa and the sound of uncomfortable silence. In my car, hands shaking slightly, I pulled out my phone and typed Quick Bite Burgers franchise information into Google. The first result made my stomach drop. Initial investment, $250,000 to $500,000. But I didn't turn around. Instead, I drove home and opened my laptop, ready to figure out how to turn the biggest moment of humiliation in my life into the first step toward something extraordinary. My apartment felt different when I walked in that Sunday night. The second-hand furniture and hand-me-down decorations that used to make me feel ashamed suddenly looked like the starting point of something bigger. I cleared off my small dining table, opened my laptop and got to work. The Quick Bite Burgers corporate website was sleek and professional, full of smiling franchise owners and success stories. I clicked through page after page, taking notes in a composition notebook I'd grabbed from my junk drawer. Initial franchise fee, $35,000. Total investment range, $250,000 to $500,000. Net worth requirement, $150,000. Liquid capital requirement, $100,000. The numbers were staggering. My current bank account had $2,847 in it, and that was after a good month. But I kept reading, diving deeper into the business model, studying profit margins and revenue projections. The math was actually encouraging. Successful Quick Bite locations averaged $1.2 million in annual sales, with profit margins between 6 to 9% for well-run establishments. I opened a new browser tab and searched for franchise financing options. Bank loans, SBA financing, investor partnerships. There were paths forward, but they all required things I didn't have. Credit history, collateral, business experience on paper. Around midnight, I found a forum called Franchise Dreamers, where aspiring franchise owners shared their journeys. I created an account and spent hours reading stories of people who'd started with nothing and built multi-unit empires. A woman named Sarah from Texas had bought her first Subway with money borrowed against her 401k and help from family. A guy named Marcus in Michigan worked 3 jobs for 2 years to save enough for a cleaning service franchise. But the story that really caught my attention was from someone called Phoenix Rising 85. He'd started as a crew member at a pizza franchise in Arizona, worked his way up to manager, then somehow convinced the franchisee to sell him the location. His posts were detailed, practical, and brutally honest about the challenges. I sent him a private message. "Hi, I work at a Quick Bite in Phoenix and I'm interested in franchise ownership. Your story really inspired me. Any advice for someone just starting to explore this?" I hit send at 1:30 a.m., not expecting a response for days. To my surprise, my laptop chimed with a reply 20 minutes later. "Hey there. Always happy to help someone with the dream. Fair warning, it's harder than you think but more possible than people tell you. Free advice. Start by really understanding the business you're already in. What's your store's daily revenue? Food costs? Labor percentages? Most employees never pay attention to these things, but future owners need to know them like their own birthday. Happy to chat more if you're serious about this." I stared at the message, realizing I didn't know the answers to any of those questions. I worked at Quick Bite 5 days a week, but I'd never thought to look at it through an owner's lens. The next morning I arrived at work 30 minutes early. Derek was doing the opening procedures, counting the register and checking inventory levels. Instead of clocking in and starting my usual routine, I approached him with what I hoped looked like professional curiosity. "Hey Derek, I've been thinking about maybe moving up in the company someday. Mind if I ask you some questions about how the business side works?" He looked surprised but pleased. Derek took his role seriously, and no one had ever shown interest in learning from him before. "Sure, what do you want to know? Like, how do you figure out if we're having a good day or a bad day? Is it just about how busy we are?" Derek's face lit up. For the next hour, as we prepped for the morning rush, he walked me through the daily reports he had to complete. Sales targets, food waste percentages, labor costs as a percentage of revenue. He showed me how to read the point-of-sale system reports, how to track inventory turnover, even how to calculate the profit margin on individual menu items. A Big Bite combo costs us about $2.40 in food and packaging to make, he explained, pulling up the cost analysis on his manager's screen. "We sell it for $8.99, but after you factor in labor, utilities, rent, and franchise fees, the actual profit is closer to 60 cents per combo." The numbers fascinated me. This wasn't just about cooking burgers, it was about managing dozens of variables that all affected the bottom line. Customer traffic patterns, supply chain efficiency, staff scheduling, waste management. Every decision had a financial impact. During my break, I called the corporate number I'd found on the website. After being transferred 3 times, I reached someone in the franchise development department. "Hi, I'm interested in learning about franchise opportunities in the Phoenix area." "Wonderful. Let me send you our information packet. Can I get your contact information and a little background about your business experience?" When I explained that I currently worked at a Quick Bite location, the tone shifted. "Oh, that's great. We love when our team members show entrepreneurial interest. However, I should mention that most of our franchisees have significant business management experience and substantial capital backing." "What kind of capital are we talking about?" "For the Phoenix market, you'd typically need about $400,000 in total investment, with at least $150,000 in liquid assets." After I hung up, I sat in my car feeling overwhelmed but not defeated. $400,000 might as well have been $4 million to me right now, but at least I had a concrete target. More importantly, I was starting to understand that this wasn't just about money, it was about proving I could run a business successfully. That night, I started a spreadsheet. On one side, I listed everything I needed to learn. On the other, I started tracking every penny of my income and expenses. If I was going to do this, I needed to approach it like the business challenge it was. Uncle Rick thought I was stuck asking people if they wanted fries with that. He had no idea I was about to turn this job into my business school. 3 weeks after that disastrous family barbecue, I had transformed from a crew member who showed up, did her job and went home, into someone who studied every aspect of our Quick Bite location like I was preparing for the most important exam of my life. Derek had become my unwitting mentor. What started as casual questions had evolved into deep dives into restaurant operations. He seemed genuinely excited to have someone who cared about more than just getting through their shift. "Maya, come look at this," he called from the office during a slow Tuesday afternoon. I followed him to the cramped back room where he was reviewing the weekly performance reports on his computer. "See this spike in food waste on Sunday? What do you think caused it?" I studied the numbers, remembering the chaos of that particular shift. We had that large catering order that got cancelled last minute, plus Jennifer was new on grill and overcooked a bunch of patties during the lunch rush. "Exactly. And look how that affected our food cost percentage for the week." He pointed to a red number on the screen. "We went from 28% to 31.5%. Doesn't sound like much, but on weekly sales of $23,000, that's an extra $805 in lost profit." The math was starting to make sense to me in a way it never had in high school algebra. These weren't abstract numbers. They represented real money, real success or failure. I'd also been spending my evenings diving deep into franchise research. Phoenix Rising 85, whose real name turned out to be Miguel, had become a regular source of advice through our online conversations. He'd agreed to meet me for coffee the following Saturday to discuss his journey in person. Meanwhile, I was documenting everything about our location. I started timing how long different processes took, noting peak hours and slow periods, even sketching the layout to identify efficiency improvements. I carried a small notebook everywhere, jotting down observations that would have seemed meaningless a month ago. Thursday morning brought an unexpected opportunity. Our general manager, Mrs. Chin, called in sick, leaving Derek to run the entire operation. By 10 a.m., we were slammed with a bus full of tourists, 2 catering orders and a broken drink machine. "Maya, I need you on register too," Derek called out, sweat beading on his forehead. "And can you call the repair company about the soda fountain?" For the next 4 hours, I found myself essentially functioning as an assistant manager. I coordinated with the catering customer about pickup times, helped train a new employee on the fry station, and even handled a customer complaint about a wrong order. When the repair technician arrived, I walked him through the problem and stayed with him to make sure everything was working properly. By the end of the shift, Derek looked exhausted but impressed. "I couldn't have handled today without you. You've really stepped up lately." "I've been thinking about applying for a management position," I said, testing the waters. "You should. Mrs. Chen's been talking about needing another assistant manager. The pay bump isn't huge, maybe $2 more per hour, but you'd get experience with scheduling, inventory, and working with corporate." That weekend, I met Miguel at a coffee shop in Scottsdale. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 30, with an easy smile and the confident bearing of someone who'd figured out how to make his dreams work. "So you want to own a franchise," he said after we'd ordered. "Tell me why." I told him about Uncle Rick, about feeling stuck, about wanting to build something of my own. He listened without judgment, occasionally nodding. "Those are all good reasons, but they're emotional reasons," he said finally. "You need business reasons too. Why Quick Bite? Why not Subway or Taco Bell or starting your own concept?" The question caught me off guard. I realized I'd been so focused on the idea of franchise ownership that I hadn't thoroughly evaluated whether Quick Bite was the right choice. I guess because I already understand how it works. That's a start. But understanding operations as an employee is different from understanding profitability as an owner. Have you looked at the unit economics? Studied the competition? Analyzed the Phoenix market saturation? I admitted I hadn't gone that deep yet. Here's what I wish someone had told me when I started. Don't fall in love with the idea of being a franchise owner. Fall in love with the specific business opportunity. Do the math, study the market, understand exactly what you're getting into. He pulled out his phone and showed me photos of his 3 pizza locations. I started with one store that was barely breaking even. Previous owner was losing money because he didn't understand cost control. I bought it for $80,000 less than he'd paid because I could prove I could turn it around. How did you prove that? I worked there for 6 months as a manager first. I identified exactly what was wrong and created a detailed business plan showing how to fix it. When I presented that to the bank along with my savings and a small investor, they took me seriously. Miguel's story gave me a new framework for thinking about my goal. I wasn't just trying to buy a business. I was trying to identify an opportunity and prove I could capitalize on it. Over the following weeks, I started looking at our Quick Bite location with fresh eyes. We were consistently busy but not operating at peak efficiency. Food waste was higher than industry standards. The lunch rush created bottlenecks that could be solved with better workflow design. Customer satisfaction scores, which I found in Derek's files, were good but not great. Most importantly, I started researching Mrs. Chin. She'd owned the franchise for 8 years, and while the location was profitable, I sensed she was getting tired of the day-to-day management. She was in her mid-50s, her kids were grown, and she'd mentioned wanting to spend more time with her grandchildren. A plan was starting to form in my mind. Not just buying any franchise but buying this franchise. The one I already knew inside and out. The one where I'd identified specific opportunities for improvement. I just needed to figure out if Mrs. Chin might be interested in selling, and how to convince her that a 19-year-old former crew member could be the right buyer. The opportunity I'd been waiting for came on a rainy Tuesday in October. Mrs. Chin had been at the store since 5 a.m. dealing with a grease trap backup that required an emergency plumber. By afternoon, she looked exhausted and frustrated, sitting in the office with a stack of invoices and an expression that said she'd rather be anywhere else. I knocked on the door frame. "Mrs. Chin? Derek said you needed help with inventory count." She looked up with tired eyes. "Maya, yes. Thank you. These supplier invoices don't match our delivery receipts again." I spent the next hour helping her reconcile the discrepancies, a process that revealed several problems with our ordering system. As we worked, Mrs. Chin opened up in a way she never had before. "You know, I used to love this business," she said, highlighting another error on a beef supplier invoice. "When I first bought this location, I was here every day, excited about every small improvement. But now," she gestured at the paperwork around us, "it feels like all I do is put out fires." "What changed?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Competition got tougher, margins got thinner, corporate got more demanding. And I'm tired, Maya. I'm 54 years old. My daughter just had her second baby, and I've missed half of my grandson's soccer games because of this place." She paused, looking around the small office that had been her second home for 8 years. "Sometimes I think about what it would be like to sell this place and just breathe again." My heart started pounding, but I kept my voice casual. "Have you ever seriously considered it?" "More and more lately. But finding the right buyer is complicated. Corporate has to approve any sale, and they're picky about who they'll accept as franchisees. Plus, most people who can afford to buy a franchise don't want to run it themselves. They want to hire managers and collect checks. This place needs hands-on ownership to really succeed." I took a deep breath. What if the buyer was someone who already knew the business inside and out? Mrs. Chin looked at me curiously. "What do you mean?" "I mean someone who's been here for almost a year, who understands the operations, the customers, the challenges. Someone who's already invested in making this place successful." Her eyes widened as she realized what I was suggesting. "Maya, are you talking about yourself?" "I am. I know it sounds crazy." "It does sound crazy," she interrupted, but not unkindly. "Do you have any idea what this business is worth? We're talking about a significant investment." "I've been researching it. I know I don't have the money right now, but I've been putting together a plan. I think I could make this location more profitable than it's ever been." Mrs. Chin sat back in her chair, studying me with new attention. "Tell me more about this plan." For the next 30 minutes, I laid out everything I'd been learning and observing. I showed her my notebook full of efficiency improvements, my analysis of our waste patterns, my ideas for increasing customer satisfaction and average transaction size. I talked about the bottlenecks I'd identified and specific solutions I'd researched. "You've really thought about this," she said when I finished. "I've been thinking about nothing else for months." Maya, I'm flattered and impressed. But even if I were ready to sell, which I'm not sure I am, the financial requirements are substantial. The SBA might help with financing, but you'd still need significant capital and a proven track record. "What if we structured it differently?" I said, the idea forming as I spoke. "What if I worked as your general manager for a year, with a contract that gave me the option to buy the franchise at a predetermined price? That would give me time to build my credit, save money, and prove I can run this place profitably." Mrs. Chin was quiet for a long moment. "That's actually not a terrible idea. It would give me a chance to step back gradually while ensuring the business stays in good hands." And it would give you time to train me on all the ownership responsibilities I haven't learned yet. There would be a lot of conditions, she said slowly. You'd need to maintain profitability targets, pass corporate inspections, prove you can handle the full management load. And you'd need to come up with serious financing when the option period ended. I understand. And Mrs. Chin? I know I'm young and I know this seems impossible. But I've never wanted anything more in my life. I will make this work. She smiled for the first time all day. You know what? Let me think about it. Give me a week to consider the idea and maybe talk to my accountant about how something like this could be structured. That night, I called Miguel to tell him about the conversation. He was excited but cautionary. This could be perfect, he said. Owner financing or lease-to-own arrangements aren't uncommon in the franchise world. But Maya, you need to be really careful about the terms. Make sure you have a lawyer review any agreement before you sign it. I can't afford a lawyer. You can't afford not to have one. Look, if Mrs. Chin is serious about this, she'll understand that you need proper legal representation. This is potentially a $500,000 transaction. Spending a few thousand on legal fees is just part of doing business. Over the next week, I could barely concentrate on my regular duties. Every interaction with Mrs. Chin felt loaded with possibility. I found myself working even harder than usual, as if I could prove my worthiness through perfect milkshake consistency and spotless dining room floors. Friday afternoon, Mrs. Chin asked me to stay after my shift. Derek had already left, and the evening crew was handling the dinner rush. She led me to the office and closed the door. I've been thinking about our conversation, she began. And I've talked to my accountant and my family. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure she could hear it. I'm interested in exploring this further. But I want to be very clear about something. This wouldn't be charity or a favor. This would be a business arrangement that benefits both of us. You'd need to prove yourself at every step. I understand completely. Good. Then here's what I'm thinking. A 1-year management contract with an option to purchase. You'd take over all day-to-day operations immediately, but I'd remain the owner and be available for guidance. At the end of the year, if you've met certain performance targets and secured financing, you could exercise the option to buy. She pulled out a legal pad covered with notes. Purchase price would be determined by a business valuation, but probably somewhere around $350,000. You'd need to come up with at least $100,000 down, plus prove you can finance the rest. The numbers were still intimidating, but they felt possible in a way they never had before. Mrs. Chin, yes. Absolutely yes. Don't say yes yet, she laughed. We haven't even talked about your management salary or the specific performance targets. This is just the beginning of the conversation. But as I drove home that night, I couldn't stop smiling. For the first time since that humiliating Sunday at my parents' house, I had a concrete path forward. Not just a dream, but an actual plan with real deadlines and measurable goals. Uncle Rick had no idea what he'd set in motion with his condescending comments. In less than a year, I might be calling him with some news of my own. My first day as Quick Bites general manager felt like stepping into a parallel universe. The same building, the same equipment, the same smell of French fry oil. But everything had changed. Instead of clocking in as Maya the crew member, I was opening the store as Maya the person responsible for every single thing that happened here. Mrs. Chin had spent 2 weeks training me on the management systems I'd never seen before. Profit and loss statements, labor scheduling software, vendor negotiations, health department regulations, corporate reporting requirements. My head was spinning with new responsibilities, but I'd never felt more energized. Remember, she'd said on my last training day, you're not just doing a job anymore. Every decision you make affects the bottom line. Every dollar you save is a dollar toward proving you can buy this place. The staff had mixed reactions to my promotion. Derek was supportive but clearly adjusting to our new dynamic. Some of the crew members I'd worked alongside for months seemed uncertain about taking directions from their former peer. A few were openly skeptical. So Maya's the boss now? Jennifer said during the morning prep, not bothering to hide her attitude. What's she, 20? I've been working restaurants longer than she's been driving. I decided to address it head-on. During our pre-shift meeting, I stood in front of the team and kept my voice steady and professional. I know this transition is weird for everyone. A few months ago, I was asking you to cover my shifts so I could study for college exams I was too broke to take. But Mrs. Chin chose me for this role because she believes I can help make this location more successful, which benefits all of us. I looked around at their faces. Some curious, some skeptical, some openly supportive. I'm not here to be your friend or your boss. I'm here to be your manager, which means my job is to help you do your jobs better, more efficiently, and with less stress. If you have a problem with me personally, I get it. But if you have a problem with this restaurant succeeding, then we're going to have issues. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into learning every aspect of the business I'd never had access to before. I arrived at 5 a.m. to review the previous day's numbers and stayed until 11 p.m. to observe our late-night operations. I studied our customer traffic patterns, analyzed which menu items were most profitable, and identified opportunities to reduce waste. The first major test came during my third week, when our morning prep cook called in sick right before the breakfast rush. Instead of panicking or calling Mrs. Chin for help, I jumped on the grill myself while coordinating with Derek to adjust our prep schedule. Maya's in the kitchen cooking and running the numbers at the same time. I overheard one of the cashiers tell another, "Girl doesn't play around." Word was getting around that I wasn't just playing manager. I was serious about every aspect of the operation. When corporate sent their quarterly inspection team, I was ready with detailed reports on everything from food safety protocols to customer satisfaction scores. The inspector, a stern woman named Ms. Rodriguez, seemed surprised by my preparation level. "Most locations your size don't track customer feedback this systematically," she said, reviewing my spreadsheets. "I want to make sure we're exceeding standards, not just meeting them," I replied. We passed the inspection with the highest scores our location had ever received. But the real breakthrough came when I implemented my first major operational change. I'd noticed that our lunch rush consistently created a bottleneck at the fry station, leading to longer wait times and frustrated customers. After studying the workflow for weeks, I proposed a solution: pre-cooking a calculated amount of fries during slower morning hours and holding them in our warming units. "That's going to increase our food waste," Derek warned. "Actually, I think it'll decrease it," I said, showing him my analysis. "We're already throwing away fries that sit too long during slow periods. But if we time the pre-cooking correctly, we'll reduce waste during busy periods and improve service speed." The first day of the new system was chaotic. I'd miscalculated the timing and we ended up throwing away more fries than usual. Jennifer made a point of mentioning it loudly enough for everyone to hear. But by the third day we'd found the sweet spot. Average order fulfillment time during lunch dropped from 4.2 minutes to 2.8 minutes. Customer satisfaction scores improved. Most importantly, our food waste actually decreased because we weren't frantically overcooking during rush periods. "This is working really well," Derek admitted. "Customer complaints are way down." More importantly, Mrs. Chin noticed. She'd been stopping by weekly to review the books and check on operations, but she was clearly stepping back and letting me run things. "Maya, these numbers are impressive," she said, reviewing our month-end report. "Food costs are down 2.3%, labor efficiency is up, and customer satisfaction scores are the best they've been in 3 years." "I'm just getting started," I told her. "I have ideas for improving our catering program and increasing average transaction size." She smiled. "Save some improvements for next year. At this rate, you'll have revolutionized the entire operation before your option period is up." That night, I updated my spreadsheet tracking progress toward my franchise purchase goal. I was earning $18 per hour as manager, significantly more than my previous wage. Combined with aggressive budgeting and a small side business helping other students with their resumes, I was saving about $1,200 per month. It wasn't enough to reach my $100,000 down payment goal in 1 year, but I was building something more valuable than just savings. I was building a track record of success. Every operational improvement, every satisfied corporate inspector, every month of increased profitability was evidence that I could run this business successfully. 3 months into my management role, I got an unexpected text from my mom. "Uncle Rick is coming to town next weekend. Family dinner Sunday. Hope you can make it." For the first time since that humiliating barbecue, I was actually looking forward to seeing Uncle Rick. I had something to show him now, not just dreams and defiant words but actual results. I was running a business, making real decisions and proving every day that I belonged in that office. But I also knew the biggest test was still ahead. Managing successfully was one thing. Actually buying the franchise was another. I needed to start seriously exploring financing options and building relationships with potential investors. The next phase of my plan was about to begin, and failure wasn't an option. Too many people were watching, and I'd made too many promises. To Mrs. Chen, to myself, and to that part of me that refused to accept Uncle Rick's version of my limitations. The Sunday family dinner was everything I'd hoped it would be. Uncle Rick arrived in his usual expensive casual wear, but this time I was ready for him. Instead of my old Quick Bite uniform, I wore a crisp button-down shirt and slacks, the professional attire of someone who had real responsibilities. Hiya. He approached with his familiar condescending smile. Still working at the burger place? Still working there, I replied calmly. As the general manager. His expression shifted slightly. General manager? Well, that's great. Moving up in the world. I am. And you know what else? I'm in negotiations to buy the franchise. The beer bottle stopped halfway to his lips. Buy it? Maya, do you have any idea how much it costs? Yes. Do I know the financing requirements? Yes. Do I have a concrete plan with measurable milestones? Absolutely. Mom appeared at my elbow, beaming with pride. Rick, you should see the reports Maya has been showing us. Customer satisfaction is up. Costs are down, even the corporate people are impressed. For the first time in my life, I watched Uncle Rick struggle for words. He looked around the backyard as if seeking backup, but found only family members nodding encouragingly. That's really something, he managed finally. I had no idea you were so serious about this. Dead serious. And Uncle Rick? When I close on this purchase next year, I want you to be my first customer. I'll personally make sure you get the best service possible. The conversation moved on to other topics, but I caught him looking at me differently throughout the evening. Not with mockery or condescension, but with something that might have been respect. Driving home that night, I felt a satisfaction I'd never experienced before. But I also knew that impressing Uncle Rick was the easy part. Actually securing the financing to buy the franchise would require everything I'd learned and more. Over the next month, I threw myself into research on business loans and investor partnerships. I scheduled meetings with 3 different banks, prepared detailed financial projections, and even reached out to a small business development center for guidance. The first bank meeting was humbling. Despite my track record at Quick Bite, my age and limited credit history made me a high-risk borrower in their eyes. Your operational results are impressive, the loan officer said, reviewing my portfolio. But for a loan of this size, we typically require several years of business ownership experience and significant collateral. The second bank had similar concerns. The third suggested I wait until I was older and had more established credit. But the Small Business Development Center connected me with Maria Santos, a consultant who specialized in helping minority entrepreneurs access capital. She reviewed my business plan and had a different perspective. Traditional bank loans might be challenging, she said, but there are other options. SBA loans, community development financial institutions, even investor partnerships. Your operational track record is actually quite strong for someone your age. She introduced me to several potential funding sources, including a local investment group that specialized in franchise acquisitions by emerging entrepreneurs. The group, led by a successful businesswoman named Patricia Williams, agreed to meet with me. I like what I see here, Patricia said after reviewing my presentation. You've proven you can run the business, you understand the numbers, and you have a clear vision for growth. We'd potentially be interested in a partnership structure. The partnership would involve their group providing most of the capital in exchange for a percentage of ownership, with a path for me to buy them out over time. It wasn't the independent ownership I'd originally envisioned, but it was a viable path forward. Meanwhile, my performance at Quick Bite continued to improve. We'd increased monthly revenue by 15% through better marketing and operational efficiency. Our food waste was down to industry-leading levels. Corporate had even featured our location in their quarterly newsletter as an example of exceptional management. But success brought new challenges. Derek had been offered a management position at a new location across town, and losing him would mean training a replacement while maintaining our performance standards. Jennifer had finally warmed up to my leadership style and become one of our most reliable employees, but she was also talking about going back to school. Maya, I've been thinking, Mrs. Chen said during one of our weekly meetings. Your performance has been exceptional, but I want to add some additional targets for the option period. My stomach dropped. What kind of targets? Nothing unreasonable. But if you're going to own this place, you need to prove you can handle growth. I want to see you successfully open a catering program, maintain current performance levels while training new management staff, and develop a plan for expanding to a second location. The additional requirements were daunting, but I understood her logic. She wasn't just selling me a job, she was potentially partnering with me in a significant business venture. I can do that, I said, hoping I sounded more confident than I felt. I believe you can. But Maya, I also want you to understand something. If you can't meet these targets, or if you can't secure adequate financing, I'll need to explore other options for selling. I can't wait indefinitely. The message was clear. I had one shot at this and there was no room for failure. That night, I sat in my apartment with a cup of coffee and a legal pad, mapping out everything I needed to accomplish in the next 8 months. Develop a catering program. Train new management staff. Secure financing. Maintain current performance levels. Create a growth plan. Each item on the list felt like climbing a mountain, but I'd already climbed mountains I'd never thought possible. A year ago, I was a crew member asking people if they wanted to make their combo a large. Now I was running a successful restaurant and negotiating with investors. Uncle Rick had thought he was putting me in my place with his dismissive comments. Instead, he'd shown me exactly how high I could climb. The catering program launched on a Tuesday in February, and within the first week, I knew I'd underestimated the complexity of what I was trying to accomplish. Managing in-store operations was one thing. Coordinating off-site deliveries while maintaining restaurant service levels was an entirely different challenge. Our first major catering order was for a corporate lunch meeting, 50 combo meals that needed to be delivered across town by 11:30 a.m. Everything that could go wrong did. The delivery driver got lost, we ran out of the specialized packaging I'd ordered, and a last-minute addition to the order threw off our entire preparation timeline. Maya, we're backed up on the lunch prep because of this catering order, Derek called from the kitchen. And we've got a line of customers waiting. I was juggling phone calls with the confused delivery driver while trying to coordinate with our regular lunch rush. By the time we finally got the catering order delivered, 20 minutes late, our in-store service had suffered, and I had 3 angry customers demanding to speak to the manager. This is exactly why I was worried about expanding too fast, Derek said during our post-shift debriefing. We're barely keeping up with regular operations. He was right, but I couldn't afford to give up on the catering program. Mrs. Chin had made it clear that successful expansion was part of proving I could handle ownership. More importantly, the additional revenue from catering was essential for hitting the financial targets I'd set. I spent the next week redesigning our catering workflow. Instead of trying to integrate catering prep with regular kitchen operations, I created a separate timeline that front-loaded the work during slower morning hours. I also hired a part-time driver and invested in better packaging and delivery systems. The second major catering order went much more smoothly. By the 4th week, we were handling 3 to 4 catering orders per week without impacting regular service. The additional revenue was already making a difference in our monthly numbers. But the success of the catering program created a new problem. I needed more staff, and finding reliable employees was proving harder than I'd expected. The unemployment rate in Phoenix was low, which meant good workers had plenty of options. QuickBite paid competitively, but we were competing with retail jobs that offered more predictable hours and less physical demands. I'd interviewed 12 candidates for a cashier position and only found 2 who showed up for their scheduled shifts. Of those 2, 1 quit after 3 days because the work was harder than expected. Maya, I hate to say this, but you might need to consider raising wages, Derek suggested during a particularly stressful staffing meeting. Target down the street is offering $2 more per hour for similar work. Raising wages would impact our profit margins, but losing customers because we couldn't maintain service levels would be worse. I ran the numbers and proposed a modest wage increase to Mrs. Chin, along with a performance bonus program that would reward our best employees. You're learning that growth isn't just about adding revenue, she said after reviewing my proposal. It's about building systems that can sustain that growth. The wage increase helped with recruitment, but it also meant I needed to be even more careful about labor scheduling and productivity. Every shift had to be perfectly planned to avoid both understaffing and excessive labor costs. Meanwhile, my financing negotiations were intensifying. Patricia Williams Investment Group had presented a formal partnership proposal. They would provide $300,000 in capital in exchange for 60% ownership of the franchise, with an option for me to buy back their shares over 5 years. The terms were fair but complicated. I'd own 40% initially, with the opportunity to increase my ownership percentage by hitting specific performance targets. But I'd also be taking on significant debt and giving up majority control of the business I'd worked so hard to understand. "This is a good deal," Maria Santos advised during our review of the contract. "You're getting access to capital you couldn't secure otherwise, and the buyback terms are reasonable. But Maya, you need to understand that you'll be accountable to partners who have their own expectations." I was torn. The partnership would allow me to achieve my goal of franchise ownership, but it wasn't the independent ownership I'd originally envisioned. On the other hand, 40% ownership of a successful business was better than 100% ownership of nothing. The decision became more urgent when Mrs. Chin informed me that another potential buyer had approached her about the franchise. "It's someone with more capital and established business experience," she explained. "I haven't committed to anything, but Maya, I need to know if you're going to be ready to close when your option period ends." The pressure was intense, but it also clarified my priorities. I'd rather own 40% of this business than watch someone else buy it and potentially undo everything I'd built. I scheduled a meeting with Patricia Williams to accept the partnership terms, but first I wanted to negotiate one additional condition. If the business exceeded certain performance targets, I could accelerate the buyback timeline. "You drive a hard bargain," Patricia said with a smile. "But I like entrepreneurs who bet on themselves. Let's structure it so that exceptional performance gives you exceptional rewards." The revised partnership agreement included performance bonuses that could significantly reduce my buyback timeline if I could grow the business beyond our projections. It was risky. Failure to meet targets could extend my minority ownership, but it gave me the opportunity to earn majority control faster than the original 5-year timeline. With financing secured, I turned my attention to the final challenge Mrs. Chen had set: developing a plan for a second location. This required market research, site analysis, and financial projections for expansion. I spent evenings driving around Phoenix, identifying potential locations and analyzing competition. I researched demographic data, traffic patterns, and commercial real estate costs. The plan I developed wasn't just about finding a second location. It was about proving I could think strategically about business growth. By March, I had everything in place: a successful catering program, a trained management team, secured financing, and a detailed expansion plan. The only question was whether it would be enough to convince Mrs. Chen, and myself, that I was ready for the responsibilities of ownership. 8 months after that humiliating family barbecue, I was weeks away from potentially becoming the youngest Quick Bite franchise owner in the Phoenix market. The journey had been harder than I'd ever imagined, but it had also taught me more about business, leadership, and myself than I'd learned in 19 years of life before it. The finish line was in sight, but I knew the real test was just beginning. The call came on a Thursday morning in April, just as I was reviewing our weekly performance reports. Mrs. Chen's voice was professional but carried an undertone I couldn't quite identify. "Maya, can you meet me at the store after closing tonight? We need to discuss your option to purchase." My stomach dropped. We still had 2 months left in the agreement period. An early conversation could mean good news or very bad news. I spent the entire day second-guessing every decision I'd made over the past year. Had I pushed too hard on the catering program? Were our food costs too high? Had I missed something important in my expansion planning? Derek noticed my distraction during the afternoon shift. "You okay? You seem stressed." "Mrs. Chen wants to meet tonight about the franchise purchase." "That's good, right? You've been killing it here." I hoped he was right, but experience had taught me that business conversations were rarely as straightforward as they seemed. Mrs. Chen arrived at 9:30 p.m., after the last customer had left and the closing crew had finished their duties. She carried a thick folder and had the serious expression she wore during corporate inspections. "Maya, sit down. We need to talk about where things stand." I sat across from her at one of the dining room tables, trying to keep my hands steady. "First, I want you to know that your performance over the past year has been exceptional. Revenue is up 22%, customer satisfaction scores are the highest in the district, And corporate has asked if you'd be interested in consulting with other struggling locations. Relief flooded through me, but her tone suggested there was more to come. However, I've received a formal offer from another buyer. Someone with extensive restaurant experience and the capital to close immediately. The relief evaporated. What kind of offer? 15% above the appraised value, cash purchase, no financing contingencies. The numbers hit me like a physical blow. Even with Patricia Williams' investment group, I couldn't match a cash offer that high. My carefully constructed plan suddenly felt like a house of cards in a windstorm. I see, I managed to say, though my voice sounded strange to my own ears. Maya, I want you to understand something. This isn't just about money. Yes, the other offer is financially attractive, but I've watched you transform this place. You've proven you can run it better than I ever did. She opened her folder and pulled out a spreadsheet covered with numbers I recognized, our monthly performance reports from the past year. Look at this trajectory. Food costs down 18%, labor efficiency up 12%, customer complaints down 60%. You've built something here that goes beyond just managing a restaurant. But they're offering more money. They are. But here's what I'm thinking. What if we restructured your deal to be more competitive? Mrs. Chen pulled out a new document, handwritten notes covering the margins. I've been talking to my accountant about owner financing options. Instead of requiring you to secure all the capital up front, what if I carried part of the loan myself? You'd still need your investor partners for the down payment, but I could finance the remainder at favorable terms. The proposal was complicated but generous. Mrs. Chen would essentially become the bank for a portion of the purchase, accepting monthly payments over time instead of requiring the full amount at closing. Why would you do that? I asked. Because I believe in what you're building here. And because I think you'll ultimately be more successful than someone who just bought this place as an investment. The restructured deal would allow me to match the other buyer's offer while maintaining my partnership with Patricia Williams Group. More importantly, it would give me a path to full ownership that was faster and more achievable than the original plan. There's one condition, Mrs. Chen continued. I want to see how you handle a real crisis before we finalize anything. What kind of crisis? She smiled for the first time that evening. The kind that tests whether you're ready to be a business owner or still thinking like a manager. The next morning I understood what she meant. I arrived at the store to find a notice from the health department posted on our front door. Temporary closure, pending investigation. Derek was already there looking panicked. Maya, I don't know what happened. Everything was clean when we closed last night. I read the notice carefully. Someone had filed a complaint about food safety violations, triggering an immediate inspection that found several issues. Improper food storage temperatures, inadequate cleaning procedures, and expired products in our inventory. The violations were serious enough to require immediate closure until we could demonstrate compliance with all health department standards. We couldn't reopen until a follow-up inspection confirmed that all issues had been resolved. My first instinct was to panic. A closure would cost us thousands in lost revenue, potentially damage our reputation, and definitely impact the financial projections I'd presented to investors. But as I stood there reading the notice, I realized this was exactly the test Mrs. Chen had mentioned. Derek, call everyone scheduled for today and let them know we're temporarily closed. Then meet me in the office. We're going to figure out exactly what went wrong and how to fix it. The next 48 hours were the most intense of my life. I brought in a food safety consultant, replaced all questionable inventory, implemented new temperature monitoring procedures, and retrained the entire staff on proper protocols. I documented every action we took and created a comprehensive plan to prevent future violations. The follow-up inspection was scheduled for Monday morning. I arrived at 5 a.m. to do one final check of everything, but I was confident we'd addressed every issue. Inspector Martinez was thorough, checking temperatures, reviewing our new documentation systems, and testing our staff's knowledge of proper procedures. After 3 hours he signed off on our compliance. You can reopen immediately, he said. Whatever you did over the weekend, it worked. This place is in better shape than most restaurants that have never been cited. We reopened Tuesday morning and I expected customers to be hesitant about returning. Instead, word had spread through the community about how quickly and thoroughly we'd addressed the problem. Several regular customers mentioned being impressed that we'd taken the closure seriously instead of trying to minimize it. Maya handled this exactly right, I overheard Mrs. Patterson telling another customer. Shows real leadership when someone takes responsibility and fixes problems instead of making excuses. That afternoon, Mrs. Chun called me into the office. I heard about how you handled the closure, she said. Inspector Martinez called me personally to say he's rarely seen such a comprehensive response to violations. I knew it was important to get everything right. You did more than get it right. You turned a potential disaster into a demonstration of your commitment to excellence. That's what separates owners from managers. She pulled out the purchase agreement we'd discussed the week before. Maya, I'm ready to move forward with the sale. The restructured financing, the owner carry loan, all of it. If you're ready to sign, we can close within 30 days. Looking at the contract, I thought about the journey that had brought me to this moment. A year ago, I'd been a crew member whose biggest responsibility was making sure the ice cream machine was properly cleaned. Now I was about to become a business owner, responsible for every aspect of a successful restaurant operation. The numbers were still intimidating. The responsibilities were enormous. The risks were real. But I'd proven to myself that I could handle whatever challenges came my way. Mrs. Chin, I'm ready to sign. The closing took place on a Tuesday morning in May, exactly 1 year and 2 weeks after that disastrous family barbecue where Uncle Rick had dismissed my dreams as unrealistic. I sat in a conference room at Patricia Williams' law office, signing document after document that would make me a franchise owner. Mrs. Chin sat across from me, occasionally pointing out important clauses or explaining particularly complex terms. Patricia and her investment team reviewed the financial arrangements one final time. The lawyer walked us through every page of the purchase agreement, the loan documents, and the partnership contracts. This is the final document, the lawyer said, sliding the franchise transfer agreement across the table. Once you sign this, you'll officially own Quick Bite Burgers location number 847. My hand trembled slightly as I signed my name. Maya Rodriguez, owner. Congratulations, Mrs. Chin said, reaching across to shake my hand. You've earned this. The celebration was brief. I had a restaurant to run. But as I drove back to my Quick Bite location, I felt a satisfaction I'd never experienced before. Every challenge I'd overcome, every late night spent learning the business, every moment of doubt I'd pushed through had led to this. The staff had decorated the restaurant with congratulations banners. Derek had organized a small party during the slow afternoon period, complete with a cake that read, "Congratulations, owner Maya." Speech. Jennifer called out and the rest of the team picked up the chant. I stood in front of the crew, my crew, and looked around at the faces of people who'd watched me grow from their peer into their leader. A year ago, most of you saw me as just another crew member trying to make it through my shifts. Some of you probably thought I was crazy when I said I wanted to own this place. A few people laughed, remembering those early conversations. But here's what I learned. Crazy dreams aren't crazy if you're willing to do the work to make them real. Every one of you contributed to this success. Every time you showed up on time, every customer you served with a smile, every procedure you followed correctly, all of that helped prove that this location could be successful under new ownership. I paused, looking around at the restaurant that had become my second home. I also want you to know that owning this place doesn't mean I'm going to change everything. What we've built here works. We're going to keep focusing on great food, excellent service, and taking care of each other. The only difference is that now I have even more reason to make sure this place succeeds. The applause was genuine and warm. These weren't just employees anymore. They were partners in a business I was determined to grow. That evening, after the closing celebration and the last customers had left, I sat alone in my office, and called my parents. Mija, we're so proud of you, Mom said, her voice thick with emotion. I always knew you were special, but this is incredible. Have you told Rick? Dad asked. I smiled. Not yet. But I'm planning to. The next morning I made 2 phone calls. The first was to Miguel, my mentor who'd helped me understand the difference between dreaming about business ownership and actually achieving it. Maya, I heard through the franchise network that you closed yesterday. Congratulations. Thank you. I couldn't have done it without your advice. You did the work. I just pointed you in the right direction. So what's next? Growth. I want to open a second location within 2 years, And I'm already looking at potential sites. That's the entrepreneurial spirit. Remember, the first location taught you how to run a business. The second location will teach you how to build a business. The second call was to Uncle Rick. Maya, how are you? Your mom mentioned you were still working at that burger place. Actually, Uncle Rick, I'm calling to let you know that I bought the burger place. I'm now the owner of Quick Bite Burgers location number 847 in Phoenix. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Bought it? Maya, that's incredible. How did you? I mean, that must have cost a lot of money, which I raised through investor partnerships and owner financing. It turns out that year of flipping burgers taught me more about business than most people learn in MBA programs. I don't know what to say. I'm sorry, Maya. I was wrong about what you were doing. Completely wrong. Uncle Rick, you don't need to apologize. Your comments at that barbecue were exactly what I needed to hear. They motivated me to prove that I could build something significant. Well, I'm really proud of you. This is amazing. Thank you. And Uncle Rick? That invitation still stands. Next time you're in Phoenix, I want you to be my first VIP customer. I'll personally make sure you get the best service we can provide. After hanging up, I walked through my restaurant one more time. The same red booths, the same menu boards, the same smell of French fry oil. But everything was different now because everything was mine. I thought about that 19-year-old girl who'd been humiliated at a family barbecue, feeling stuck and small and limited by other people's expectations. She'd had dreams but no plan, ambition but no strategy, hope but no concrete path forward. Now at 20, I owned a successful business, managed a team of 15 employees, and had concrete plans for expansion. I'd learned that the difference between dreamers and achievers wasn't talent or luck. It was the willingness to turn abstract goals into specific actions and see those actions through to completion. The best part wasn't the money, though the financial security was nice. It wasn't the respect, though I appreciated how differently people treated me now. It was the knowledge that I'd proven something important to myself. I could identify what I wanted, figure out how to get it, and execute a plan even when everyone around me thought it was impossible. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Family barbecue this Sunday. Uncle Rick is coming. He's been telling everyone about your success. Can't wait to see you. I smiled, thinking about how different this Sunday would be from that Sunday a year ago. Same backyard, same family, same Uncle Rick. But this time, I wouldn't be the young woman asking people if they wanted to make their combo a large. I'd be the young woman who'd taken the worst moment of professional humiliation in her life and turned it into the foundation of her success. The door chimed as Derek arrived for the evening shift. Hey owner, he said with a grin. Ready for another day of running your empire? You know what, Derek? I really am. As I grabbed my keys and headed out into the Arizona evening, I couldn't help but laugh at the beautiful irony of it all. Uncle Rick had tried to shame me for working in fast food, so I'd bought the franchise and fired him from having any power over my self-worth. But the real victory wasn't proving him wrong. It was proving myself right. Right to dream big, right to work hard, and right to believe that a girl from Phoenix could build something extraordinary one burger at a time.